Um, just like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This is our last environment related webinar of the year. We have tried to curate like a wide range of environment topics through the webinars, including this year we've had the Caithness beach cleans with a dynamic duo, very interesting. Caithness Seal Rescue Centre, again, well, very interesting. Sadly, they're very busy at this time of year. But it was nice to see how how their operation works and how they came about. And we had a webinar with FIDRA, which is an environmental organisation focusing on issues like plastic and chemical pollution. And tonight we are delighted that Matt and Alec from Pembrokeshire Coastal Forum are here to tell us about what they do and why, and share an insight into their marine code and a project called Wild Seas Wales. But they'll tell you about that as well. And I'd like to thank Phil Stone for helping set this up in the first instance. So, Matt, if I just hand over to you to like start off the webinar, would that be okay?
It's fine with me, thank you. Cool. So, evening all, greetings from mild and very wet Pembrokeshire. And thanks, Alison, for organising this. It's a real pleasure to talk to people from around the country about our work. And I hope you'll find some of it useful and interesting. So I should just explain, my name's Matt Lister. I work at Pembrokeshire Coastal Forum. My role is the Sustainable Recreation Manager, which is quite a grand title for working on projects to do with outdoor recreation and activities and the sustainable side of those, mostly from a wildlife point of view. And then my colleague Alec is here. She's the Sustainable Recreation Coordinator, and she works mainly on the Marine Code and the Wild Seas Wales projects that she's going to talk about tonight. And just to explain, she's actually hosting the slideshow at the moment. So I'm going to be talking for a little bit and she's going to be advancing the slides. So forgive us if there's a little sort of delay in that for a moment. So I don't know if the people online have ever been to Pembrokeshire, but we are blessed down here that it is a beautiful part of the world that is really enjoyed by a lot of people. From a recreational point of view, and we have a lot of commercial activity down here from a recreational point of view, lots of sea kayaking, guiding, introduction sessions, and other water sports as well. And we've got this wealth of history, wildlife, culture, and a huge range of environments around our coast. Because it's a peninsula, there's always a sheltered side, and we're blessed with estuaries, tidal streams, wild coastlines, mud flats, the works really. And the amount of protection on that coastline is huge. There's layer upon layer of different classifications of protection. So what we have to do is when we're working with recreational groups, whether that's commercial groups or members of the public going out, we need to try and make them as aware as possible about all of this important protection that's going on and how wildlife, history, and culture has got a huge stake in everything we do. So what we try and do is work with all the organizations that put all those designations across the coastline to make sure we're working to best practice. So we work at Pembrokeshire Coastal Forum. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary of existence this year. And we were set up back in the turn of the century following the Sea Empress oil spill that happened down here in 1996, which is one of the country's biggest oil spills when an oil tanker hit the mouth of Milford Haven Estuary. And after that, it became clear that we needed an independent coastal organization to work with stakeholders about all the management of that coastline, because we weren't really in a good position in 1996 to deal with that coastal spill. So the Pembrokeshire Coastal Forum came into being in 2000, and we work across a wide range of projects to do with sustainable coastlines. So our vision is a sustainable coast and ocean for future generations, which ties in with the Welsh Government's Future Generations Act, which is all about making decisions with a thought for the future as well. And we try and work and collaborate with all the communities in Pembrokeshire across all our work. So we have a marine renewable energy section that looks at floating offshore wind, especially in tidal research. We have the sustainable recreation team, which is us. We work on climate adaptation. We have some communities down here that are on the forefront of climate change when it comes to sea level rise and increasing severity of storms. So we work with those communities, and we work with skills, education, and engagement as well. And we also touch then on water quality and land use, which ties in with that sustainable coast. So the bit that we do, myself and Alec and our two colleagues, is the sustainable recreation. Um, and there is a long-lasting project that we have inherited, really, started in the mid 90s, so a very long time ago, a group called the Outdoor Charter Group, which was all the outdoor sectors um, working together with the land management and the recreation and conservation bodies to make sure that all the activities that go on in Pembrokeshire um, are as environmentally friendly as possible in a collaborative way. So we're trying to promote businesses, and we have over 40 outdoor adventure businesses here and a huge array of conservation and land management teams as well. National Trust, we have a National Park Authority. We also work with Visit Wales and the County Council, as well as all the individual people like the Wildlife Trust and the RSPB. So a vast array of stakeholders and making sure that we do as much as we can to make recreation as sustainable as possible and responsible. And we are world famous in Pembrokeshire for some of our wildlife. So it is really important that we look after it. So the Outdoor Charter Group leads on to Alec's work with the Marine Code. Um, the Charter Group is free to join. It's a forum to discuss sharing best practice when you're out and about doing activities. We promote education and awareness raising of issues, communicate with each other, and work with partnerships. It's really important, and it's not easy. It's a constant fight to keep engaging with people and keeping talking to people, and that's luckily our role is paid for to do that. And the Outdoor Charter Group has three very simple responsibilities: is to respect other people when you're out and about, protect the natural environment, and enjoy the outdoors and stay safe. So we do bring safety into some of our messaging as well. But the middle one of those, the protect the natural environment, is key to all our work. Um, so after the Outdoor Charter was established, there became a need for sort of specific protections for certain activities. And that's what Alex is going to talk about now, because that led to a thing called the Pembrokeshire Marine Code. And I will let her carry on from there.
Thank you, Matt. I was enjoying listening to that. You carry on and I'll
You're better at this bit than me.
yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, take the opportunity to talk about the Pembrokeshire Marine Code. And I was going to say, I don't know if it was said at the beginning, but if there are any questions or anything, if hold on to them till the end, and we'll be happy to answer anything as best we can. Um, so yeah, like sort of Matt mentioned earlier, as a range of statutory conservation, environmental and cultural can't say the word denotations in Pembrokeshire, and it's not just Pembrokeshire. I'm thinking further afield to Scotland and our other sort of United Kingdom countries, British Isles. Is I'm sure you'll agree that sort of our reasons for enjoying the coast are really linked and driven by the quality of the environment and the wildlife it supports. So sort of unless this is protected, it sounds a little bit dire, but we risk losing the very ecosystems that provide our livelihoods and enjoyment. So and even with the big network of statutory designations there are in place around the UK, feels that we found anyway in Pembrokeshire that a voluntary approach to marine conservation can have really lasting and positive effect on an area, sort of helping to protect wildlife for future generations. In Pembrokeshire, we're aware that sort of recreational disturbance historically and still currently is stated as a threat to the conservation objectives across many of the sites, national park sites and wildlife trust and national trust, as Matt said, sites. And the Marine Code aims to assist with minimising disturbance at these sites and species. and it really sort of shows sort of managing large marine areas with multiple access points and uses is challenging and requires significant resources. So the Marine Code project took a voluntary approach and developed 2002, and a approach to regards to reconciling the differences between stakeholders with contrasting opinions and their statutory obligations. So back at the turn, did you say the turn of the century? I think you did, didn't you, Matt? That makes me feel like
Sounds a long
yeah,
time ago, doesn't it? But
yeah, doesn't it? Yeah, so around about 2002, developed with local wildlife boat tour operators and other organisations, shown here in these slides, all the various organisations working closely with the Pembrokeshire Coast National Park Authority and the RSPB. And it aims to, say, limit disturbance and protect marine wildlife from the increasing recreation and leisure pressures. And aims to do this through using codes of conduct and agreed access restrictions. So also realising the important role that marine and coastal tourism plays in Wales. So there are codes of conduct have been drawn up for behaviour requests around seals, seabirds, cetaceans, and wading birds. And then also alongside those codes of conduct are, I think, I think it's unique to Pembrokeshire. I don't know if they haven't come across other areas that have this, but say, see, I could be wrong. But there are seasonal access restriction maps that have been drawn up with all talking with all the different organisations and also the recreation providers themselves, like Matt said, as part of the Outdoor Charter Group, which have show areas where there are sensitive species and where they could encounter higher levels of recreation activity, and show where there's, say, seabird nesting to sort of restrict access during the nesting period from March to July, and then seal pupping is through the beginning of August until now, say the end of November. And then there's seals and seabird areas combined, and also just raising awareness of where cetaceans can be seen quite commonly, sort of reduce wake and minimum speed, and all shown on mapped areas. So these have all been put in a leaflet. The Pembrokeshire Marine Code leaflet is used to advertise the messages. So as well as the specific codes of conduct and the mapped areas, there's also 4 general principles we try to share with people. So looking to plan ahead, so to use the Marine Code and use those, sort of looked at those maps to see where are the best places to go and where is maybe better to avoid at the certain times of year. Looking at keeping your distance, reducing speed and sound, and also sort of the extra one was just knowing how to view wildlife, how to get the best out of your time, really, the best for watching marine wildlife in its natural environment and not disturbing it, so you get the most out of your visit. Here's a slide here then. I've just shown that this is, say, the mapped areas. So there's 12 areas in total. As I said earlier, sort of just where been chosen where there are mainly a higher number of potential sensitive species where they can cross over with larger numbers of recreational activity. And it's really trying to say using a spatial approach which can allow marine users to avoid areas during times where marine animals can be more vulnerable, say such as the seabird nesting or grey seal pupping. And I think it is a relatively novel approach where if other areas have been interested in adopting it. I know we were contacted quite some time ago from over, say, Guernsey and Antigua, and I'm not sure if either of those have managed to follow up and create their own, but interesting to hear that the other places are, say, looking at this as a potential extra way of protecting wildlife. So what we've tried to do as well is there's distances that have been added to the codes of saying that there's certain distance that is, so I've put is deemed safe for putting in sort of inverted commas to view wildlife, and these can be quite hard to ascertain whilst on the water, I think. So we're really do try and sort of highlight what disturbance actually looks like, so people can understand in the different animal groups what it looks like if they are disturbing animals, and then they can take action at any distance, really. So I've drawn up these various infographics, which are really trying to share that message of what does a seal, an upset seal look like, for example, and if it's you see these things happening, then you can take action. You can stop and reverse reverse paddle, as it were. So I sort of rattle through sort of what the Marine Code is and how it developed. It's over a long period of time. Think about saying that turn of the century. It's 20, 25, coming up to 25 years ago for the Marine Code. So it's had sort of quite a long history, and I just wanted to have a slide here of the considerations of developing the Marine Code and things that were thought about, or lessons learned, the challenges that have come along and still occurring now, really. So really, first thing, group together, we're sort of working together. It's really having to bring multiple partners together and achieve a sort of stakeholder-led project, really. So it's achieving consensus with multiple partners, and it's ultimately stakeholders may want the same, say they want the same outcome, and the process involved sort of is in achieving this is crucial for the project's success. And they say there's often passionate personal views, which requires time and resources, but actually listening to all the different views is sort of essential in being able to develop the voluntary approach, making sure it works as much as possible for everybody. Also, to really sort of feel that it's sort of neutrality. It's, if possible, a sort of an independent neutral body, I think, should be considered to assist in sort of hosting a code or bringing the people together to develop that code. So to be able to balance the views of the stakeholders, it's sort of, we found that it's most effective for a voluntary approach if all sort of stakeholders are involved in project development, but maybe not necessarily writing that up, so having an independent neutral body to actually write the codes. Also, sort of as I was looking back as well as of writing sort of these slides, so the history of the Pembrokeshire Marine Code is quite diverse, and membership came up sort of in the earlier days. People sort of signed up to follow the Marine Code and follow a sort of charter, like the Outdoor Charter Group, really. That became quite tricky to uphold, so that sort of it took a slightly different route over the years of then trying to advertise further to the general public as a sort of voluntary approach rather than signing up to an actual become a member. So put this on here, say to be able to consider whether if you are developing a code, if it requires membership or a criteria. Is it generally high level code aimed at all users of the marine environment, or more specific detailed codes aimed at specific user groups? And as I said, the Pembrokeshire model has evolved. It looked at both specific user groups sort of in its earlier days, and now is more leaned sort of towards the general public. But so the membership, it provides buy-in and ownership, but it does require quite a lot of resources to develop and manage. And then say that if it's a membership, the criteria needs to be developed. It's important that it's agreed by all the stakeholders, and if appropriate, sort of reviewed periodically. I know previous sustainable recreation role 20 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago, I can't think now, when Tom Ludd was their previous colleague who worked on the Marine Code, he had spent a lot of time policing the earlier Marine Code, so when it was a membership and there was specific criteria to follow. So that was, say, he learned lessons to widen it to become more of sharing the message with the general public and working more with stakeholders, rather than sort of, there was quite a lot of policing and finger pointing that it backfired a bit along the early days. So moving on to looking at sort of consensus, which I touched on earlier about working together, but there needs to be, it does need to be a compromise, which can leave some individuals unhappy as well, say individuals happy and others unhappy. So in the Pembrokeshire context, sort of some conservationists were not happy in the earlier days with the recommended distances, and it's similar actually as it's evolved. I've ran a review of the Pembrokeshire Marine Code last year, and there's still a similar sort of theme that, say, some conservationists aren't happy that the distances are far enough away that are put in the code, and they didn't follow other national guidelines. But then on the other hand, some individual tour boat operators are unhappy that their judgment on distances should be based on it should be based on their ability to interpret animal behaviour after, say, they've got lengthy local experience and so forth. So really, it's a way of developing a consensus. So I can't think of the right, is it, not everybody goes away happy, as it were, but without it being a practical approach, so we won't get people following it. So say without stakeholder engagement or the self-policing aspect of it and ownership, it's only possible through this way of sort of consensus. Also, just last thing was looking at the audience. Talked about a bit over these other pieces on this slide, but determining sort of the actual marine use. There's a determining factor in developing the areas in Pembrokeshire. So for example, sort of Ramsey, the number of mapped areas, including caution areas, extreme caution areas, so forth, they were already mapped by our RSPBs, wardens and so forth. And it's really looking at the user groups and considering all the different user groups and developing the codes with consideration of what is achievable as well in a working environment. So thinking about Ramsey, there's the Ramsey Sound, which is quite narrow. Thinking about distances, you can't physically be, say, more than, say, 100 meters away sometimes from certain animal groups, just as a safety aspect and so forth. And to say the audience as well can change over time. So when new user groups or issues are reported, so really looking at the key messages and making sure they're relevant for all the users, and communication channels sort of adapted to suit to have the maximum impact, really. I've lost my slide now. There we go. So on that sort of looking at the audience and so forth, over the time, the Marine Code has developed trying to educate and communicate the messages, the codes, the, say, mapped areas, and try to make innovative methods to share this. So to show you that we've developed Marine Code buoys around Coldy Island, which is off Tenby in the south of Pembrokeshire. Sort of a visual aid developed. So a tour boat operator came to PCF. I think they're coming up to 10 years old, this project actually, to say that personal watercraft users and people out on the water really needs to be made more aware of, say, the seal pupping areas and maybe seabirds around Coldie Island, and came up with this unique idea of using navigation markers to be a really visual display of the code. So we, through funding, managed to sort of acquire the buoys, and then it's a very much a joint, say, partnership arrangement that the tour boat operator can insures the buoys and deploys them through the correct seasons and has somewhere to store them as well, so they get taken out during the stormy months, say over winter, and then pop back in again around Easter time. So it's been a really good way of sharing the message around Coldie. Not necessarily the best method for everywhere because they are quite in your face, but it has worked, and it fits within the landscape sort of down around Tenby. There's a nice picture there, say, of people having a look, kayakers, and the tour boat operator has said that they do really they do work. People do look at them and have read, and then they keep their distance from the certain beaches around them. So it's just showing that, say, we continue to try and share the message as far and wide as we can. There's a number of materials to learn more, sort of created communication and educational materials, several different publications. We have, say, wildlife fact sheets and tide tables, so environmental training events that are organised, generally run in springtime, bring in advertised widely, but very sort of to begin with focused on bringing in, say, the outdoor charter group members and outdoor recreation providers to learn more about different environmental areas, say geology, flora and fauna, seabirds and so forth, and then also learn more about the marine code. And we try and schedule those at the beginning, at springtime, before people's seasons really get started. And then also, say, as part of the development of the marine code, we created a Pembrokeshire Marine Code app, so which includes all the information with the code, and it also has location, sort of quite natty location services. So if you have the app on your phone, and if you come up to one of the restricted areas, your phone will buzz at you. So Pembrokeshire Marine Code in 2022 then became part of a wider, larger app called the Wales Coast Explorer. I don't know if I've got a little video here. Oh, it's working. There we go. So includes all the marine codes of conduct from around the whole of Wales, and has lots of different facts about wildlife and interesting information on there. You can also report wildlife sightings, and there's coastal archaeology and geology in there. So it's a really good app if you're, say, coming to explore Wales, or even, I guess, in other areas, because there's very similar coastal wildlife around the UK, isn't there? So it doesn't just stay in Wales, and so you could learn. There's lots of different things about all the different wildlife that you can see along our coasts along there. So the app itself, was developed in 2022 and was created by a partnership of Welsh organisations, which was led by PCF, and partnership is associated with the wider group known as Wild Seas Wales. And Wild Seas Wales is a partnership of organisations and individuals who manage Welsh coasts, estuaries and oceans, and it exists to share good practice, useful messages about our wonderful Welsh coastline. And so the work is currently funded by the Nature Networks Fund. So originally the partnership came together in 2016 to promote guidance for discovering, respecting and enjoying wildlife in Wales. And associated with this group was developed a suite of online media tools communicating marine code information, which incorporate key messaging for the management of the access and recreation pressures, and was really sort of highlighted or focused on the threats for the marine protected areas around Wales. So with the group, say the suite of online media tools, there's a website, social media channels, and it's really to try and share the messages of discovering Wales, enjoying it, whilst also respecting it. So the shows, say, the Welsh Partnership of Marine Protected Areas around Wales, and say they are parts of the sea identified for the protection of marine habitats and species, and they cover a wide diversity of marine wildlife, including rare and sensitive habitats and species. And there are 5 officers, marine protected area officers, supporting the sites around the Wales coast. So the Wild Seas Wales group really, say, utilises a website to show sort of enjoying the Wales coastline, with lots of, say, fun facts on the website, and learning to respect. So there's where you can access all the different marine codes for around the Welsh coast from the Wild Seas website. And a suite of animations is also created through the partnership as a way to share messaging for the marine codes. So there's this, added this little one for regarding seals. So a slide, it would be great to have as many people as possible to help share the marine code messaging for, say, for Pembrokeshire Marine Code, or any other of the Wales marine codes through the Wild Seas website. And if you're able to help us spread the message, if you're visiting, say, Wales, or if you know other people who are, please do let them know about the marine codes. There's a variety of different ways that you can share through the Wild Seas Wales website. We've got our own sort of Pembrokeshire Marine Code website, and say, in the app, say, is a really great one to be able to share with people as well. And say we've all got social media channels as well, so that those animations we share on those and can be shared wider as well. So really wanted to say that there's just a real opportunity with every visitor to Pembrokeshire, that they have an opportunity to spread a message to protect the features that we hold dear. And it sort of does, whether you're a visitor, tour operator, rental provider, say, doesn't matter. Say you have the opportunity to promote responsible marine tourism, really. Saying there's just simple messages like keeping a distance from wildlife, reducing noise, so you make a big impact when shared with others. So whether it's a conversation, a sign, or an information leaflet, sort of every step toward responsible marine tourism really helps protect our environment. And that's me with all my talking done. I do have, there is a little quiz if anyone was up for a quiz, but otherwise it's over to you, really. And if Matt had anything else he wanted to add before we
No, I was just going to
take on
say
any questions.
I've put a couple of links in the chat for the Marine Code and Wild Seas Wales websites, and also a link to where you can find the app. Just that last point Alec was talking about, the outdoor charter really pushes the idea as well for responsible outdoor leaders when you're talking about commercial guides and leaders doing activities around the coastline, for them to be ambassadors for these schemes as well. So when they see someone out, a member of the public or a group of public who are not with a guide, maybe going too close to birds on a cliff or seal pupping beach, they feel empowered that they can go over and have a polite and respectful chat with people and say, did you know there's some seal pups over there? You're a bit too close. That's the parent there. They're probably a bit upset. So should we all back away? Obviously, you can't force people to follow that. And we have done training in the past for outdoor instructors on how to have difficult conversations, and how to approach things. And obviously, all you can do is advise, but we do try and empower our local instructors and businesses to have that role as well, to give them that feeling of being part of this. And it's really important, I think, to have those eyes and ears on the coastline. But no, that's it. If anyone's got any questions, please ask away.
Is Karen? Is that your hand up, Karen?
Hi, yeah, thank you. My voice has gone a bit croaky. I was wondering whether you do any work with local fishing clubs and angling clubs, because I'm based in Dale and I do beach cleans every couple of days on the beaches around here. And often in Dale, they have fishing competitions on the beach. And the next day, I will go down to the beach and I will find fishing line, hooks. I find lengths of fishing line 4 or 5 meters long with the hooks attached and fish dead on the hooks. So I'm wondering whether you have any conversations with these, because that doesn't seem to me to be upholding the
No.
ethos of a marine code. So I wonder, there's a question for me around sort of monitoring and enforcement. Obviously, it's kind of the day after I'm going down and finding these things, but I wonder whether something could be done sort of, if I don't know whether they need permission for these competitions, but whether there could be something built into giving that permission that they have to go back the next day to sort of clean up. Because there's also things like food wrappers that they've left, because often I think they have overnight competitions. But these hooks are being left on a beach where there's children running around, dogs, it's really not good. So that was one of my questions. I do have others, but maybe we'll start with that one.
I have say hello as well, Karen. I have been made aware actually in the past about your specific area and anglers potentially causing that problem, and it's quite hard to get the right contacts, to be honest, to try and engage, but it is a continuing I don't want to say mission, it's the wrong word, but continuing to get the right person to talk to. And your question about what permissions they need, I actually don't know. It's something I could raise. I don't know if you know, Matt, if what sort of
No,
authority
if
they
you're
need
running a
to.
competition, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a public foreshore, so perhaps you don't need official permission. But that brings us back to the voluntary codes. We can make people aware, and we just hope that some groups are harder to reach than others, and anglers don't often. There are clubs, but a lot of anglers are sort of independent people, and they are hard to reach, to talk
Well, I
to.
do say I have been researching, and I have now actually I think got some email addresses. So it is, yeah, I'm on the track, as it were, to be able to try and engage with anglers. And as say sort of Matt says, we can share the information and do our best to sort of ask them to be able to share it with their members as well, to be made more aware. It is just the ongoing quest we have to try and engage with, I suppose it's with the people that are less aware of the marine code, I think.
Should
Yeah,
just say as well, at the
yeah.
moment, our sort of social media is all pointing at wading birds who are coming in, migrating down to spend the winter. And again, another sort of group to try and get to is just dog walkers in general who let the dogs off the lead and let them have a run across the beach, which, most people see as a fairly harmless thing. But when those migratory birds are resting and feeding and they get disturbed, it can have a big effect. And again, dog owners is a very big group, like anglers. It's very hard to get messaging out, which is why we use social media. We can boost posts and sort of target them at certain aspects of society to try and get those messages across. But it is difficult.
Yeah.
Organizations are much more easy to contact than individuals when it comes to this sort of
Yeah.
thing.
I was surprised, to be honest, that the GAN wasn't on your map of kind of as an important area, because it's such an important area for overwintering birds and
Yeah.
seabirds. There's an osprey down there. It's a really important area, but it wasn't on your map.
The
So
wading birds code of conduct is actually relatively new. So when did the review last year, we created the wading birds code. So that was a new code of conduct, and which is great to put sort of birds on the map, say wading birds on the map with the marine code there. But at the time, was decided, say, not to put areas. So we didn't go down the route of putting mapped restricted areas for wading birds, and that might be something that could be looked at in the next review, as it were. Yeah, I think it was, say, lots of talks with stakeholders and developing the code, and then it was decided to have an opportunity to see how that goes, to then look at how to map up areas specifically for wading birds. But yes, the GAN, we are very aware, of the GAN as very important area for birds around there, and it's potential, say, like Matt was saying about social media, it's possible that we can, if we have, say, it's not mapped, so we haven't got a specific mapped area, but we can always talk about certain locations in the copy of our social media posts. So, for example, say the GAN and certain areas along the Cleddau and things can be raised throughout this winter as really sort of
if I could
hotspots,
make
as it
another
were.
point as well, then, because I'm on the Manx Shearwater Rescue Group.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be really useful if around that time of year, from sort of, I think this year they started mid-August, fledging from Skoma, and we were rescuing up until kind of like mid-November maybe. So we've now started putting signs out along the road at Newgale, because Newgale is a particular hotspot. But that would be really useful as well, if sort of around that time you could have something on your social media, just asking people to beware.
Yeah, I mean, certainly putting that down and say we did share. No, we did share some things about Manx Shearwater whilst it was set, but maybe not as early as mid-August, because I know some of our colleagues were actually part of, say, they helped out as well as collecting up the poor shearwaters in the, it was was that the September storms, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was a couple of mass strandings at Newgale in September.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Got Andy with his hand up. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi there. I enjoyed that talk. It's really interesting to hear some of the problems that you've been tackling, and the approach is wonderful to see. I think the app looked fantastic, and you're doing that all along the coastline. That was very good to see. Certainly something we could promote to perhaps paddlers going south and to use.
Are you
would be
based
great.
in Scotland, Andy? Or
Oh yes,
you...
yes,
yep.
Yes. I'm in the Cromarty, which is north of Inverness, and
Nice.
I sit with Alison on the Access and Environment Group for Paddle Scotland. So I have my question really was based on, I'm familiar with some of the problems you describe. I mean, it's interesting you talk about dog walkers, for example, and I think that's quite analogous to paddlers or people angling, or everybody believes that the thing that they're doing is really quite harmless. And probably if they were the only person doing it, it would be. But when you combine all the activity, it starts to have an impact. And I know when I worked for what was then Scottish Natural Heritage on the east coast of Scotland, southern east coast of Scotland, we had quite a lot of important areas for waders. And in fact, we thought that dog walkers in particular were one of the reasons why some of the sites were not in favourable condition because of the level of disturbance. And but I do have a question. And the question is this. I think it's what did come over a little bit, and we have the same, and we obviously have code of practice, is that it's very easy to slip into the kind of policing mode of wildlife. And actually, it's really, I would suggest, really important to have an approach that is a partnership approach where people don't feel that they are compelled to follow a code, but actually welcome the code and want to embrace it as being the way that they want to follow their pursuits and recreation. I just wondered maybe how you were, whether you agree with that. If you do, how you were perhaps helping that route develop, and whether you also were perhaps, because this is about paddling as well, whether, one of the things I think often that certainly in Scotland, where we have fairly good access rights to land, at least in Scotland, people are concerned about is losing those rights. So, combining a partnership that perhaps gives people good access to the sea to do paddling, combined with also promoting a responsible approach when they're on the water, might be a very productive one. And I wondered if you'd explored twinning those together at all.
Yes,
Do you want to go, Matt?
I'll go. So from the National Park Authority down here for the Pembrokeshire coastline, they and talk. This is talking about commercial because it's a bit easier to start with. They rely on the fact that any commercial organisation doing recreation on the coast, including paddling, if you are a member of the Outdoor Charter Group, then you are inherently given permission to continue operating because they know that by being part of the Outdoor Charter Group and achieving the basic membership criteria of attending our meetings and some of our training events, you are part of a responsible industry. So I think, and then because you've got them actively in the group, you can then go to them and say, we are going to be doing a review about the Marine Code like we did last year. What do you think in the Marine Code, from your point of view as a commercial operator or as an individual paddler, is good, isn't working, what's realistic? And we say the same things then to all the conservation organizations as well as all the powered boat tour operators. And that's how you get that consensus. And as Alex said, she touched on, there was the first iteration of the Marine Code did rely on an officer, a colleague of ours, going out and having reports of people going too close to a seal and then trying to meet them in the car park and say, you were seen going too close to a seal. And that didn't go well because he had no authority. There's no law being broken. The threshold for wildlife disturbance from a wildlife crime point of view is very high. It has to be reckless. And just going a bit close to a seal isn't deemed to be that. So that sort of confrontational approach just didn't work. And we were in danger of losing all the consensus with the Marine Code. So it was rethought and taken on that voluntary, but let's take everyone along on the journey sort of model. And that's how it's continued to grow and be successful. And people can come to us and say, we would like to add an area. So maybe, like Karen was saying, an area of mud flats that's really important in the winter. In the future, that could be included potentially as a specific mapped area. There was another question as well, Andy. I can't remember. There was something else.
I was just going to say it's more tricky, isn't it, with sort of Andy was saying about it, of people, in an ideal world, it'd just be wonderful to people to be able to take on that responsibility of those knowing all the codes of conduct, to say, not necessarily, and just enveloping them as a person to know that this is how I behave along the coast. And I think that's sort of you were maybe implying, Annie, that that people have that ownership and the responsibility, and can care for the coast that way, but it's, I think, yeah, very tricky to know how to, as it overlaps with Karen's question about engage with people, with potentially the non-engaged, trying to engage them, as that's what we've been using social media. We've been trying to say that's our aim with social media, to try and see if we can contact those people, as it were.
I think others want to come in, so I won't I've already asked a long question, but just to try and explain, it wasn't a criticism. It's just that, and I also agree that you can't just trust, say, oh well, I hope people will do things. You obviously need to positively promote messages and encourage people. That's the whole point about a voluntary approach, is that you take people along with you and you hope that they buy into the messages that you're having. I was curious as to, I think our experience in Scotland has been that some codes have worked better than others, and sometimes the ones that are voluntary but seen as imposed are the ones that work least well. And also where those that are promoting the codes are seen as effectively trying to pursue the interests of, very importantly, the interests of wildlife, for example, but perhaps aren't looking at the wider picture. So, if in the context of seals, if people can find if there's somewhere that people can go and watch the seals, maybe a hide or a walk or something, that's a really good way, very common way of managing wildlife, is to kind of offer them something which is as good or better. And I was thinking in the context of paddling, often one of the constraints on paddling is difficulty to getting to the water, parking, etc. So seeing some of the agencies that are invested in wildlife management, perhaps helping paddlers with that problem. And, the quid pro quo is expect paddlers to really embrace some of the environmental challenges we all have to wrestle with, might be a way forward.
I think, the outdoor charter group works in that way. So the providers can come along and say, it would be great if we could carry on launching from this particular harbour, but we have issues with parking and access, and can we have a couple of bays for minibuses and trailers and things like that? And in return, the National Park or the National Trust or whoever manages that car park can look at it and go, that seems reasonable. If you're taking a minibus down there, that's 10 cars not visiting the car park. So we'll put a bay in just for a commercial minibus, for example. But obviously all that's the proviso is when you take your group offshore, you're following the Marine Code and promoting that very best and highest practice that you possibly can. And those things have to go together, I think, and that's the responsible way of doing it. And I think we are prepared and able to have those conversations in the county, which is good. So what we almost feels like we're on board with all our commercial operators now, and the next challenge is reaching more leisure users of the coastline and talking to our local tourism organisation to try and promote that across a wider range of visitors when they come to the county, whether in an Airbnb or a campsite or whatever, they still get access to that Marine Code messaging, especially if their campsite's right next to a beach and a launching spot, for example.
And I think, so I didn't touch on it at all, so maybe think about it, was it all needs unfortunately really we have to be funded to be able to, there has to be some lots of money to be able to continue the work of I say it's really hard to then carry on driving it. So Matt was saying to focus on trying to reach other people. So maybe think of funding as well, because we're currently looking at trying to receive funding for working with harbours. I think is what we've, as part of the next step, trying to engage with marinas and harbours to potentially say engage with their users. So that might be a way of getting in touch with sort of fisher people, anglers, and those water users and recreation users as well. Sorry, Matt, I jumped in at the end.
No,
Just
absolutely.
Just that's what kind of interests from a paddle sport point of view. That's and having an education background. I think what this is, like certainly consolidated in my head is that if you want people to be engaged, you have to, it does have to be voluntary. It can't be thrust upon people. And I think showing people the why it's important, through education or the awareness raising or your social media and things like that, showing people why it's important is, I think, crucial to get people on board. I know, like Karen was talking about beach cleaning there. One of our webinars was with a beach cleaning couple from Caithness that do that voluntary, but they did a webinar for us, and they had collected 76 tons of plastic in the last couple of years, and they had images of birds that have been killed because they've got fishing tackle stuck in their throats. And so moving from that into what we can do about it, or what, how we can help, how we can raise awareness of these kind of things so people understand the why, like having, a protected marine area, protected coastline is so important. Then I think you get more people involved. We would love to get the funding to have an environment course for paddle sport members and coaches and leaders so that they could spread that word. But again, as you say, Alec, it's difficult to get funding. But I think raising awareness and sharing so that then people can reshare is crucial to get people to pick up the message. I think when people know that, what harm can be done by something that seems harmless, I think then people take that on board. It's not just, if there's one provider, there's 100 providers using the same kind of area, so it's that, amount of people that are using areas and things like that. But anyway, that is something that we are trying to raise funds, to look at an environment course that, could tie into some of the things that are included in the Marine Code. I just think it's fantastic. I mean, it's, you can see why it's taken so long to get that amount of work, that you've put in to get that Marine Code together. But I think
We should
it's
just say as well,
fabulous.
actually, we haven't really mentioned it. Every year we run training course events through the Marine Code and the Outdoor Charter Group. They're aimed at outdoor instructors, but are open to the public and paddlers and just outdoor recreation people as well.
Brilliant.
And we theme those on suggestions from the Outdoor Charter Group, whether that's the providers or the conservation body. So it could be, we're really worried. There's more seal pups now than there used to be seals on the rise in Pembrokeshire. We need to do some specific training for people about how to identify seal pups and their life cycle and what you can and can't do. So we can, and then we will get the local seal experts to run an event, and we promote that and get as many people along as possible. We've done venue specific training, so lots of people go to certain spots to do lots of different activities. We talk about the history and the geology as well as the wildlife, so instructors and members of the public have a wide general knowledge of that area just for their own interest, but then to pass on to clients and visitors. So those training events are really popular, and they're actually a pleasure, good part of the job to organise and run, because
away from the screen.
away from the screen, outdoors, and we get to see people and have a good chat with them. We've had funding recently. We've been able to have boat trips around Ramsey Island and Skoma with some of the country's top seabird experts and things telling us about what we're seeing, and that's a real privilege, and really successful as well.
Well, that's great. Well, is there
I
any
was
final
sharing, so you didn't need to look at I didn't think you needed to look at that anymore.
Has anyone got any other questions before we
just answering Sarah's question in the chat?
All right.
So if you see, you can feel free to get in touch with either Matt or I, or both, if you do have anything else you wanted to follow up on. So,
well,
we can put our emails in the chat if that's.
That would be great, yeah. And we can share them. I mean, it has been recorded, so I know that there's some people, Rachel, you said one of your colleagues would like to watch it. There were other people I knew couldn't make it tonight, so they're interested in watching it as well. So that's great. So Matthew's going to put that up somewhere for sharing.
Yeah, it'll be on YouTube, and I can email it out as well.
Thanks very much. That's great. Well, I'd just like to.
There's a good question from Andy there about where funding comes from. I mean, that is a massive thing. We're lucky at PCF. We have a specific funding officer who looks for stuff, but most of our funding comes through organisations like Natural Resources Wales, who is our government body, and they have project funding for what's our current one is Nature Networks Fund, which is just about protecting the wildlife of Wales in any environment, and we can apply and say this is the sort of work we'd like to do, and they have different versions of that fund every couple of years that we have been successful and applied to, but we have small amounts of funding from smaller organizations who just give us a little bit of money to help with our training events. Alex done more on the funding over the years.
So yeah, a little bit smoothly. People like Sea Changers have given us smaller amounts. They've been specifically have helped with the training events, which is great. And like Matt says, Nature Networks Fund is currently funding the Wild Seas Wales work, and bringing that partnership together for the shared learning. And previous funders, I say, have been through NRW, although less so more recently, because it has been, I think, Natural Resources Wales have their funding pots as well have been squeezed, so quite tight.
But the National Park Authority here and the National Trust give us some core funding to do the background work of the outdoor charts as well.
I was thinking the actual review work last year was funded by CCB, who I've now completely
Coastal Capacity Building Fund from the local nature partnership. Yes. So there's lots of funding. Again, it's a case of seeing what's out there and having an organisation that can put together a bid to do that work. And we are lucky that PCF have got a long-standing arrangement of being successful at funding bids, and the work rolls on because of that. So I guess starting is hard.
Yeah, it can generally, sometimes can be relatively stressful as well if you've smaller pots of money, as it were. You manage to get them, but then there'll be a very tight deadline to get that work done. So it's quite a lot of some peaks and troughs as well. It's the funding game.
So I thought it was just worth talking through quickly because it was a good question at the end there.
Yeah, no, isn't it? It's hard. I mean, it is hard to get established, to get that funding. If you can get a good amount of funding to start with, that's it's evident in what's been produced. It's absolutely fantastic.
It wasn't always that way as well. I think we've managed to get here after quite a long time. So I've mentioned Tom Luddington, who's off the Marine Code officer quite some years ago, and in his role, he sourced the funding as well, and I know that he talked to how sort of challenging that was to be able to, most of his time was trying to search or find the funding, as well as then having to try and actually complete the projects. But we've managed to move in a very positive direction, and now have, say, our own funding business development colleague whose job it is to write those funding bids. So,
Thanks. Yeah, thanks,
Sally.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks for bringing this presentation to us. It's been fantastic. If anyone's got any other questions, Alex put both Alec and Matt's email in the chat. The webinar will be online, so it's been recorded. You can share it, and it just leaves me to say thank you so much for spending the time preparing this for us and presenting for us. We really appreciate it. And if there's anything that we can do for you, or if you're up in Scotland, I know that Alec, you come up quite a lot, but it'd be really nice to take you around some of the areas up here if you want. So thank you so much for your time.
Careful there, I might take you up on the.
You're welcome. Look, just bring your jacket if you're coming up to Aviemore.
Yeah.
Anyway,
if Scotland could guarantee some snow, I would love to come up in January or February. Yeah, but yeah, if you could guarantee
we've just had
that.
some. You just get it's random. We've just had a week of really nice snow. Folk were up in Cairngorm,
right.
and there was Nordic skiing going on, but then it disappeared. Anyway, you just never know.
Yeah.
You need to go up for a long time, Alec.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks so much. Thanks to everybody for joining, and speak to you soon.
Take care. Enjoy your winter.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye. Bye.